The first thing Eli Carter hears inside the lighthouse is the ocean breathing through the bricks. Not waves. Breath. Slow. Patient. As if the Atlantic itself has lungs and is waiting for him to step farther in. He kills his headlamp and lets the morning cloud light spill through the cracked lens room above. The air tastes like iron and wet salt. A rust smell clings to the spiral stair, and somewhere a length of loose cable knocks a steady, hollow beat against the wall. Scout, his mud-colored shepherd, presses to his leg and gives a low, uneasy whine. Easy, Eli murmurs. It's just wind. He wants to believe that. But the wind doesn't tilt shadows where there are no windows. The wind doesn't make the door behind you swing shut on a hinge no one oiled since the government decommissioned this tower 20 years ago. The wind doesn't lift the hairs on a man's forearms like a warning hand. He bought the lighthouse at a county auction for $25. A joke bid, a broke farmer's dare to himself, because $25 felt like proof that hope could still be bought cheap. His cornfield is a ledger of failed rains. The bank has started to call him by his first name. In a month he'll lose the farmhouse where his wife's music still lives in the wallpaper, and he will not be the man who loses that and smiles politely. So $25, paperwork in a folder, a key that didn't fit, and a rumor everyone in Harbor's Edge repeats the way you say grace. There's a safe in the lighthouse keeper's room, and nobody ever got it open, not even the last keeper before the light went dark. They say he sat and stared at it until the day he died. Eli reaches the keeper's level. The room is a throat of brick and shadow. A foghorn far outside bleats once, a blind animal. He sweeps his lamp, bunk, iron stove, a toppled chair, dust that looks like sifted bone. Then there it is. A gray steel box embedded into the wall where bricks give way to poured concrete. Its dial dulled by salt. Its handle frozen at 3 o'clock, like time stopped and forgot how to start again. He touches the safe. It's cold enough to sting. Scout sits, ears forward, then flinches at a soft sound from inside the wall, a sound that shouldn't exist in stone. A faint, almost polite knock. Eli's breath fogs. He puts his ear to the metal. Another knock, a second apart. Not echo. Not pipe. Not rat. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. Then silence. So complete he can hear his own heart counting debt. He steps back. The knocking doesn't return, but something else does. A smell like singed rope and old lavender. A smell he hasn't met since the funeral. Lydia's soap, the one that came in a brown paper wrap with purple twine. Impossible. And yet here it is, braided into salt. Eli swallows hard. Lid, he whispers, ashamed of the tremor in his voice. Scout looks up at him as if to ask who he's talking to. The safe waits, indifferent, heavy as a secret that outlived its owner. Eli rubs his thumb over the frozen dial and feels an old, half-buried certainty rise through the fear. Whatever sits behind this door, money, letters, nothing at all, is the only thing that feels like forward. The farm is sliding out from under him. The lighthouse cost him 25 cents and the last of his reputation. This safe might cost him everything else. He sets his toolbox on the floor. Outside, gulls wheel and cry. The ocean breathes in and out. Eli takes a breath to match it and begins. Eli Carter didn't set out to buy a lighthouse. He woke before dawn, fed the 2 cows he had left, patched a broken fence with scrap cedar, and drove his beat-up Ford to the courthouse with Scout on the passenger seat and a thermos of coffee that tasted of tin. He brought a folded list of equipment he might resell, a rusted hay rake, a grain bin door, a lot of wire spools. He figured he could scrape a few hundred to buy a week, maybe 2. The auctioneer rattled through parcels and pallets. The room smelled of floor wax and tired men. When Lighthouse Parcel 17A, Harbor's Edge, as is where is, one decommissioned structure and a patch of rock came up, everyone laughed. The starting bid was $1. No hands. 50 cents. Nothing. 25 cents. Eli lifted his fingers because it felt like a dare from God, and the gavel came down before the laugh in his throat could turn into a no. Sold. After, a fisherman slapped him on the back and said, "Hope you like ghosts." Someone else muttered, "Heard there's a safe." Heard the last guy heard it knock. Eli smiled like a man who'd found a coin in the street. But on the drive home, sea haze pooling in the gullies, he kept seeing Lydia's piano in the front room, sheet music still open to the song she was practicing when the fever took her, marks in the margins, a note to slow down. He kept seeing the letter from the bank, the one with the date circled, a clock you can't turn back. 25 cents doesn't stop a flood, but it can float a man long enough to breathe once. That night, He told the dog the truth. "If there's anything in that safe that fits in a pocket," he said, "we might have a chance." Scout thumped his tail. Dogs are generous with belief. Before we go deeper into Eli's tower and the secret waiting in the wall, if you're here for stories that feel like wind off the water, quiet at first, then full of teeth, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these long, slow burn tales alive. Now, back to the lighthouse. The lighthouse doesn't make room for people. It makes room for weather. The stairs are narrow. The walls weep. Eli moves like a man inside a throat, careful not to wake whatever the place remembers. He returns the next morning with oil for the hinges, a hand drill, a can of penetrating solvent, and a stethoscope he found in a box of Lydia's old nursing school things. He sets Scout to watch at the door and works the safe like a stubborn engine. The dial doesn't turn so much as complain. He warms it with his palms. He whispers numbers he knows by heart because every farmer knows the way numbers lean. Acres, bushels, dates. He tries Lydia's birthday, the day the light was decommissioned, the year the storm took 3 boats from the harbor. Nothing. At noon he eats bread and apples and writes down every number he's tried, then listens through the stethoscope again. The safe hums a little, not electricity, but something like heat where there shouldn't be heat, a low thrum, then faint and exact, 2 taps from inside the wall. Pause. 2 more. Eli freezes. The taps aren't random. They're measured, almost shy. He counts the beats between them, mouth dry. "Who's there?" He asks the wall, and feels foolish. The wall says nothing. The smell of lavender returns and lifts the skin on his arms. Eli eases the stethoscope away. Scout stands and points his nose at a seam in the brick by the bunk, where salt and mortar kiss. Eli runs his fingers along it and finds a hairline gap where the bricks don't meet true, as if someone laid them with a secret in mind. He fetches his chisel. With care and apology, he begins to pick at the mortar. The sound is delicate, like ice cracking on a pond. A brick slides free. Behind it, black. Cold breath spills from the opening as if the wall has lungs. He slides his hand in and touches paper, thick, old, wrapped in waxed cloth. He pulls it out. A packet of letters, the edges salt-burned. The top is addressed in a steady hand to Keeper V.H. Hale, Harbor's Edge Light. Hale. Eli knows that name. Victor Hale is the man everyone blames for letting the light go dark one storm too many. Drank himself sideways. Watched ships by lantern like a boy with matches. Died alone in a rented room with his boots on because he never learned how to take them off without an audience. Rumor is a town's favorite meal. Eli breaks the wax. Inside, a letter dated 1907 written by someone who signs only C. It isn't a love letter. It is an instruction. Turn the dial in the pattern the tide keeps on a south wind. 3 long, 1 short, 2 long. Listen. If the breath answers, wait. The wall will warm like a hand. Count to 7 and pull. Do not give it to the men from Boston. Eli stares, heart kicking. He lays the letter on the bunk and feels the room tilt around him. Slightly off true, as if the tower itself has leaned in to read. He touches the safe dial. He closes his eyes and thinks of the cove on a south wind, the way waves rake the shingle in long sighs, then pause, then 2 quick pulls. He turns the dial to match that rhythm, slow, respectful. The metal is cold, then less cold, then warm enough to seem alive. Scout lets out a small, incredulous bark. From the stethoscope, a click. Not a tumbler falling, not exactly. A click like a tongue against the roof of a mouth, then a whisper of air from the seam around the door, and a soft, unmistakable exhale from within the wall, as if something has been holding its breath a very long time, and just now remembered how to let it go. Eli counts to 7 because the letter says so. He pulls. The handle moves a fraction, and stops. At the door at the base of the tower, footsteps. Slow, measured, not a tourist, not a kid. Scout growls low. Eli's spine goes cold in a different way. A shadow fills the doorway. A man steps in wearing a harbor-issue canvas coat, eyes the color of husked steel. His hair is clipped neat. His smile is thin and church quiet. Eli recognizes him from town. Camden Rusk, Boston Salvage and Heritage Acquisitions, the kind of man who calls debt by its first name and brings a contract to a funeral. "Mr. Carter," Rusk says, like it's a greeting and a verdict. "Congratulations on your purchase. How'd you—" "County records," Rusk says, glancing around the room as if checking inventory. And rumor. There were letters in this wall, yes? I'm here to take them somewhere safe. Safe. Eli touches the stethoscope on the safe like it's a talisman. What's in the box? History, Rusk says. Things that don't belong on a farm table. And things I'm afraid that could make your life complicated. Scout steps forward, a line of quiet muscle. Rusk's smile doesn't change, but his eyes do. He sets a slim briefcase on the floor and clicks it open. Inside, a file with Eli's name, the bank's letterhead, dates circled in red. A cashier's check next to it. Eli can see the zeros even from here. Sell me the contents, Rusk says, voice soft enough to pass as kind. No questions asked. You'll keep your house, your land. Your dog will still have a yard to run. The wall behind the safe gives another faint, patient knock. Eli looks at the check until the numbers blur. He thinks of Lydia's hands pressing soil around seedlings in spring, of the way she hummed when she didn't remember she was humming. He thinks how quietly a life can empty out. Then he thinks of the letter signed C. Do not give it to the men from Boston. I don't sell what I don't own yet, Eli says, and hears the steadiness in his voice with surprise. Rusk studies him, disappointed the way a teacher is disappointed when a clever child chooses wrong. You're not the only one who knows this lighthouse breathes, he says. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't let curious boys drown in this place while you play hero. He leaves with a last look at the wall that is almost possessive. The door shuts. The tower exhales again. Eli listens to the safe like it might confess. Then he resets the dial to the rhythm the letter described and feels the warmth build. And when the 7th count hits and he pulls, the handle comes farther this time. A seam of black opens. Cold breath, salt, and an odor beneath it that makes his throat tighten. Smoke, clean and distant like a lantern lit in another room. He opens the door 1 inch. No more. Inside, darkness like velvet, and 2 shapes wrapped in oilcloth. On top of them, tied with cord, a brass key the size of a man's thumb. He doesn't move the bundles, not yet. He picks up the key and feels at once that it is more than decorative. It's heavy, worn where many thumbs have pressed it. He turns it over and sees, etched shallowly, the name Hale. Scout noses the open seam and huffs. Somewhere down the cliffs, a bell buoy tolls once. Eli thinks of how the ocean breathes through brick and of the men from Boston, who always arrive with money shaped like mercy. He pockets the key and closes the safe again with a firm, reluctant click. Outside, fog thickens. Pressure builds. Something is buried here. He intends to find it first. By dusk, the rumor has grown legs. A boy on a rusted bike watches the lighthouse with round eyes. 2 fishermen linger at the pull-off above the cove, smoking and pointing like cartographers of trouble. Eli pretends not to see any of them as he ferries supplies up the switchback. A pry bar, a coil of rope, a coil of hope he can't quite roll tight. He reads the rest of the letters. They trace a history the town never learned. Keeper Victor Hale and C. Constance Wilder, a code clerk sent from Boston during a rash of coastal smuggling at the turn of the century. The lighthouse wasn't only a lantern, it was a listening post. Morse in, Morse out. Constance writes in a careful hand about ships that sailed with legal cargo on paper and contraband in the keel, stolen artifacts, coins lifted from wrecks, ledgers that could embarrass men with buildings named for them. The safe, the letters say, isn't a safe in the usual sense. It's a throat to a second wall, a hidden cavity, a place to hold what shouldn't be seen until the right eyes arrive. The brass key is to a hatch above the lens room. If this reaches you, V, one letter reads, and I am taken back to Boston or simply taken, the hatch will answer to your name. The ledger is for the light, not for the men who have tried to own the dark. Ledger. The word moves through Eli like a bright fish. He climbs to the lens room. The glass panes are cracked but proud, framing a gray circle of sea. The wind thrums. At the center dais where the old Fresnel lens once stood, a squat pedestal remains. Around its base, tarred canvas peels like old bark. Eli runs his hands along seams until his palm finds a shallow depression, a keyhole disguised as a knotted brass rivet. He fits the Hale key. It turns with a stubborn, lonely sound. A hidden hatch slides back an inch. Cold air flexes against his face. He lifts. Inside the pedestal, a compartment big enough to hide a man's sins. A stack of leather-bound books rests within, wrapped against salt. On top lies a tin of oiled cloth, smaller than a lunch pail. Eli opens the tin and finds a device. A compact telegraph key modified with an extra contact and a brass plate engraved with a pattern. 3 long, 1 short, 2 long. He swallows. The same rhythm. He eases one ledger free. The leather is whale dark. The edges brittle. He opens to the middle and finds columns of numbers, ship names, dates, and a list of names inked in a hand that needs no flourish to be cruel. Donors, judges, harbor masters, a senator whose plaque hangs in the courthouse where the auctioneer laughed. Next to each name, amounts. Next to some amounts, a small inked X. The ledgers are a lighthouse bright enough to burn a city's shadow. Boots on the stair below. Eli closes the compartment, slides the hatch shut, and turns the key. He tucks the device under his coat. Scout's ears prick. The boots are brisk, unafraid. Mara Lynn steps into the room with the kind of grace that makes noise think twice. Mara runs the harbor's Edge rescue crew. She is not from Boston, and she does not carry a briefcase. She carries a coil of line over one shoulder and a skepticism she wears like a watch. Her hair is braided. Her eyes miss nothing. "You didn't answer your phone," she says, then takes in the room, his breathing, the way his hand rests casual, not casual on the pedestal, the way Scout has stopped growling. "You're not hurt. Only in the statistical sense," Eli says, which makes her almost smile. "The harbor got visitors in polished shoes," she says. "They asked where the lightkeeper used to hide his whiskey. When I said you don't drink, they asked where you hide your stubborn. Did you tell them?" "I told them stubborn men don't hide it." She steps closer, lowers her voice. "What have you got, Eli?" "Pressure," he says. "And a maybe." He shows her the tin and the brass plate with the rhythm etched into it. He doesn't show her the ledger, not because he doesn't trust her, but because the ledgers feel like a loaded rifle in a house with a lit stove. Too much power for a casual gesture. Mara runs a finger over the plate. "This matches the old fog signal pattern for this headland," she says. "Long, long, long, pause, long, long. Fishermen used to joke you could hear it in your bones if you lived here long enough. The safe breathes to it," Eli says. "Are you asking me to tell you that's normal?" She shakes her head. "Storm's coming in tonight. Real one. Don't sleep here." "I don't plan to sleep at all." She studies him, and the tower decides she can stay. "Then I'll stay until you don't fall." They work until night corrals the horizon. Eli returns to the keeper's room and turns the dial to the rhythm. Mara listens on the stethoscope, calls out the faint clicks like a surgeon calling for instruments. The handle moves farther, stops again, as if the safe wants him to want it more. Between attempts, they pry more bricks loose and find additional letters. Constance's hand growing more urgent, then precise again, as if urgency requires precision to be heard. At midnight, the storm arrives like a made thing. Rain rattles the lens room. Wind tongues the stairs. The lighthouse breathes faster. Somewhere below, the door bangs in a way that says it had help. Rusk is back, with 2 men whose coats carry the clean smell of money. They don't knock. They don't shout. They simply climb. Mara moves to the stairwell, all line and leverage. "I'll buy you 2 minutes, she says softly, and ties a knot in the rope that means drop them if you can. "Do the thing you came to do." Eli turns the dial to the ocean's rhythm, slow and careful while footsteps become iron. On the 7th count, he pulls. The handle gives with a sound like a seal breaking after a long winter. The door swings open to reveal the 2 oilcloth bundles, and beneath them, a slim wooden case stamped with a faded crest. He lifts the case first. Inside, a brass stamp, a seal, and a pouch of coins, so greened with age, they look grown. He sets them aside and pulls one bundle to the bunk. He parts the oilcloth. Inside, a ledger so small it looks like a prayer book. He opens it and sees in Constance's measured hand the cross-reference, page numbers to page numbers, men to money, ships to nights when the light flickered. Accidentally, he hears Mara grunt, a satisfied sound. A man thuds onto the landing below. Scout launches a warning bark that means we hold here. Eli's fingers move faster. In the second bundle, not money. Letters. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Not love, not apology. Confessions. Men wrote them when they feared exposure, promising repayment, promising silence, promising prayer. Constance collected them like a net. Eli slides the little ledger inside his jacket. He picks up the tin telegraph key and the brass plate. He closes the safe and throws the dial once to muddy the trail. The wall knocks once, as if to say yes. Mara backs into the room, cheeks flushed. "Company," she says. and a man's hand appears on the doorframe, ring heavy, watch heavier. Rusk steps in, rain beating perfectly on his coat. "Mr. Carter," he says, almost weary. "Don't make this dramatic. Drama's not my talent," Eli says, and palms the ledger. "Then here is a prosaic sentence. You will hand me the contents of your little museum, and I will hand you your life back." Mara's rope slithers like a patient snake between her fingers. Scout stands low, ready. Eli feels Lydia's song in the walls. He feels the tower breathe and the storm try to match it. He feels the names in the ledger like hot stones in his pocket. "Come take it," he says, and means it. The tension pulls tight as wire. Rusk's smile folds away. His men move first, one toward Mara, one toward Eli. Not charging, not yelling, just confident, as if bodies are paperwork. Mara lets the first man pass and then steps inside his reach, turns his momentum with a fisherman's grace, and sends him down the stair with an economy of force that suggests she has handled worse than storms. His shout becomes a drumbeat below. Rusk doesn't flinch. He looks at Eli, then at Scout. "Animal control," he murmurs, and the second man produces a telescoping baton with a hiss. "Don't," Eli says, and Scout bares his teeth in a smile that is not a smile. The baton man advances. Eli does not think. He moves the way the field taught him. Simple, direct. He swings the heavy brass telegraph key in a short arc and catches the man's wrist. The baton clatters. Scout lunges and takes the man's sleeve in his mouth with surgical care, pinning him to the floor with a growl that's mostly suggestion. Rusk sighs as if bored by physics. "This is all very quaint," he says, and draws a compact pistol from the smooth interior of his coat. Not flourish, not threat, just punctuation. The room tightens around the shape of it. Mara freezes, hands raised. Eli feels the ledger hot against his ribs. The wind presses the lighthouse. The lighthouse presses back. "You misunderstand me," Rusk says mildly. "I'm not here to harm. I'm here to collect. The history in this tower is combustible. It belongs with people who know how to bank a fire." "You mean smother it," Mara says. "Banking, smothering, words." Rusk tilts his head, the pistol a small mouth open in conversation. "The names in those books don't merely embarrass families. They detonate livelihoods. Your town starves if its myth dies. Harbor's Edge doesn't exist without the men who bought it a harbor. Maybe it deserves to be hungry a while," Eli says. "Spoken like a man who doesn't feed children," Rusk says gently. "I do. Not mine, but men above me who ensure men below them eat. Give me the books." Thunder leans its shoulder into the glass. For a second, the room is white. Eli uses that second to move, not toward Rusk, but toward the pedestal. He slams the Hale key into the hidden slot and turns. The hatch pops, the mechanism loud in the storm. He wrenches it up and reaches in. Rusk swings the pistol toward him. Mara moves. She doesn't grab the gun. She grabs Rusk's wrist and the line of rope at once, loops, yanks. It's a small fisherman's trick, older than both of them and perfect as a knot in scripture. Rusk's arm snaps down. The pistol barks a deafening round into brick. Chips spit like bees. Scout flinches and then plants harder. Eli hauls the stack of ledgers free and shoves them into the rope bag Mara wore up, muscles screaming. He throws the tin telegraph key in after them. Rusk tears his arm loose, eyes gone flat. "Enough," Rusk says, and there is no mild left. "You don't understand the calculus here." "I understand tides," Eli says. He yanks the rope bag tight, shoves it into Mara's hands. "Go. I'm not leaving you with... Go." He looks at her in a way that means we both live if you move now. Mara hesitates exactly the amount of time it takes to decide you trust someone with your life, if not with your evening. Then she runs for the stair, rope bag thumping her hip, Scout a brown streak at her heels. Rusk aims for her back. Eli does the only thing a man with empty pockets and full hands can do. He makes himself a storm. He grabs the heavy brass lamp housing from the floor and hurls it. Not at Rusk, at the window. Glass explodes outward. The wind enters like a guest who has been kept waiting in the rain and means to be heard. The room becomes rain and roar and the taste of iron. Rusk staggers. The gun wheezes a second round into the night. The lighthouse, insulted, breathes deep. Eli drives forward, shoulder down, the way you tackle a hay bale that thinks it's heavier than it is. He hits Rusk hard enough to make philosophy irrelevant. They fall. The pistol skitters, kisses the edge of the open hatch, and disappears into the pedestal's dark mouth with a sound that says some endings are tidy. Rusk snarls like a man who has never had to snarl. He's strong. Money buys a gym and time to use it. Eli is farm-strong and grief-strong and tired, which makes a third kind of strength. They grapple in a rain of old brick dust while the storm tries to tear the room open wider. Downstairs, Mara runs. She does not run away. She runs the rope she knows. Out of the keeper's room, down the spiral, into the weather, across the slick apron of rock where the rescue boat is moored in the lee. She throws the bag into the boat, snaps lines loose, and whistles low. Scout leaps aboard like a working verb. Mara slams the throttle and vanishes around the black shoulder of the headland, toward a cove only the rescue crew use when the sea is mean. Back in the lens room, Rusk surges and pins Eli, forearm grinding his throat. "You think paper beats money?" He spits. "You think sunlight beats shadow because a story says so?" Eli can't speak. He can only remember Lydia's voice at the piano, the way she said, "Let the measure breathe before the downbeat." He lets himself go slack for a heartbeat, then twists, uses the looseness to roll, and drives his thumb into the soft triangle at Rusk's jaw. The man yelps, shifts, and Eli shoves him toward the broken window and the scream of wet air. He doesn't throw him out. He is not that man. He just makes him choose. Hold the wall or hold the lie. Rusk chooses the wall because all men pick gravity when they can feel it. Sirens in the distance, not Boston polished. Harbor honest. Rusk hears them and bares his teeth, not a smile. "Those books don't save your farm," he says, panting. "They salt it. They'll save somebody's," Eli says, because he has decided this is not about his acre anymore. Heavy boots thunder on the stair. 2 harbor deputies arrive soaked and surprised, guns holstered because they expected a trespass call, not a small war. They take in Eli bleeding at the mouth, Rusk's rain-slick fury, the broken glass, the air that tastes like secrets. "Everybody down," one says automatically. Rusk steps back, palms up, wet hair immaculate. "Officer," he says, and produces a card that makes the deputy's eyebrows climb. "We'll sort jurisdiction elsewhere. Right now, this man has stolen archival material from a federally designated—" "Show me the designation," Mara says from the doorway, breathless and smiling like victory tastes like salt. She's already back, empty-handed, eyes bright. "Because I checked on the radio. The only designation here is condemned surplus, and the only crime is trespass with intent to interfere with a lawful owner." She steps to Eli's side and squares to Rusk the way you square to a wave. "Get off our rock." The deputies, who grew up baiting hooks with Mara, find their spines. One guides Rusk toward the stairs with the politest hand possible while implying the opposite. Rusk goes, not because he agrees, but because he calculates, always. At the threshold, he turns. "You don't know the size of the net you've ripped," he says softly. "I'm the small fish in it." "Then swim," Mara says, and closes the door. The tower breathes out. Morning is a color that admits it doesn't know what night did. The sea flattens its hair. The lighthouse smells like rain and old brass and a little like lavender because memory is stubborn. Mara brings coffee in a thermos that tastes less of tin than Eli's. Scout sleeps with one eye open, because that's the job. They don't speak much. Harbor's Edge wakes slow. Engines gulls the cough of a man who smokes too early. News spreads the way it always does here. Incorrectly at first, then less incorrectly, then in a way that will be told to grandchildren with new names. By noon, the ledgers are not in the lighthouse. They're not in Eli's truck. They're where a rescue crew hides things that need to survive. Dry, locked, and copied in a place with more lawyers than boats. Mara made calls before dawn to a state archivist she trusts and a reporter who still pays in coffee and truth. No Boston men arrived. Not yet. Eli walks the boundary of his farm that afternoon, rain-wet grass against his boots, and listens to a quiet he hasn't earned yet. The bank calls again. He lets it ring out. He is still broke. He is still in trouble. But there is a ledger in the world now that is heavier than his debt, and he feels for the first time in months like the ground means to hold him. 2 days later, a black car noses down the county road and stops at Eli's gate. Not Rusk's. Older. A woman steps out in a dark suit the color of a storm no one can name. She carries no briefcase. She carries the kind of authority that isn't loud. "I'm Assistant Attorney General Corinne Myers," she says, and shows identification that looks like it could open any door that thinks it can't be opened. "I understand you've found materials that belong to the people, not to men who think they are the people." Eli looks at Mara, who has arrived with that uncanny timing some friends have. Mara nods once. They take Myers to the rescue house. There are copies already, digital and paper, names, sums, a map of a century's worth of bought storms. Mr. Carter, Myers says after an hour of reading in a silence that changes shape as it learns, you're about to be popular. Some of that popularity will be friendly, some won't. In either case, understand, no good story ends quickly. I've got time, Eli says, surprising himself with the hope in it. The law moves slowly, like a tide that has decided on a new shore. Rusk's bosses are interviewed under lights that make sweat a character. Foundations discover that history can be a verb. Harbor's Edge learns that the men who threw the loudest fish fries once threw their garbage in darker water. Eli doesn't get a suitcase of money. That isn't how real things end. But he does get a letter from the bank that reads like humility tried on for size. A restructuring, a community fund, a recognition that keeping a family on a farm that's been there 100 years is civic work. He gets a visit from the county board that comes with a plaque for the lighthouse, not as a ruin but as a site of record, with a grant to make its stairs hold children's feet again. He gets, on a Tuesday evening when the sky burns the color of new copper, a moment where he stands in the lens room with Mara and Scout while volunteers sand and sweep below, and here's a simple thing. Quiet, clean. The lighthouse breathes like it's decided to live. He lifts the small ledger, the one he kept, and runs his fingers over Constance's neat hand. He did not keep it to hoard. He keeps it because a life needs a talisman, and because some promises are better held in a palm than in a server. Mara leans on the rail and watches gulls argue about nothing. You ever figure out that smell? She asks. Lavender? Eli says, and smiles without needing to. I think it was the tower saying it remembered the last keeper who loved it. Constance? Her too. They stand with the tide for a while. Scout sighs like a dog who trusts the day. In the stairwell, children's voices rise and fall. Somewhere in town, a piano plays a hymn that Lydia played slowly, on purpose, because some measures deserve a breath. If you felt the wind in this story and want another like it, mysteries with salt on their tongues and hope threaded through the dark, subscribe now and tell me where you're watching from. There's another light up the coast and it's been blinking in a pattern no one recognizes. Let's go see what it's trying to say.